Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, post-match. Carlos Alcaraz versus Jannik Sinner, Roland Garros 2024 semifinal. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video. Alcaraz takes it from down 2-1 via a fifth set to advance to his first ever Roland Garros final and take a 5-4 lead in the head-to-head against Jannik Sinner. Massive victory in what was a massive match. However, of all the times Alcaraz and Sinner have played, this had to be the nerviest, maybe even the most topsy-turvy. And you can make an argument through 3 sets, the lowest level of tennis, because of the tension that I think both players were feeling. Understandably, this is the deepest they've ever played at a major, and the previous 2 times they have played at majors, the expectations have not been nearly as lofty as they are coming into this match, which is essentially the winner is going to be the favorite to win the title on Sunday. Not to mention the fact there's just extra juice in this rivalry, and I think it does matter who's across from the net from you when you have this kind of budding rivalry. Anyway, tension was high, and you felt that both players were feeling the pressure. Alcaraz, from the very start, he was not himself early on in the match. Sinner gave him a huge level dip in the second set to kind of allow Carlitos back in. In the third set, Sinner started cramping, and as soon as that happened, Alcaraz took a nosedive. And I believe the reason he did take a nosedive was because he noticed Sinner's physical issues, and that actually made him nervous. It made it impossible for him to hit a second serve return past the service line. You know, it was that kind of nervous. And then I thought going into the fourth, yes, Sinner was up 2-1, but the match felt so up for grabs because neither man had really found their groove, other than Sinner right out of the gates playing really well. So who is going to find that level? I felt Alcaraz got to that spot where he could free up and play with freedom and gumption as a result of spectacular moments, spectacular shot making paired with his incredible explosive movement that created these highlight reel magical moments that, in my opinion, gave a chance for Alcaraz to get the crowd engaged, smile, let out some positive energy, and that seemed to at least change the vibes coming from his side of the net. Whereas Sinner, particularly in the fifth set after going down a break early on, he spent large portions of this match frustrated. And I never felt, again, after the first set, I never felt he got fully in that flow state. While we're talking mental, before we get to all the more tactical stuff, I do think Alcaraz's composure in the third set deserves a massive shout out. I mean, he should not have lost that set. He knows that. But he went right back to work in the fourth. He was not dejected by his failures in the third set whatsoever. Deserves a lot of credit for that. And also, you know, everything I said in the preview about this being a more pressurized situation for Alcaraz. When I was saying, you know, U.S. Open when he won in 22, Wimbledon when he won in last year, less pressure in those situations than this situation. So he had to deal with that pressure. It's just a fact of tennis, right? He did so very admirably down the stretch of the fifth set. Tons of close service games. He was able to navigate through time and time again. And I'm going to get into detail as far as, especially in that fifth set, what are the things he did so well to kind of get himself over the edge in those service games. And lastly, he's got a very solid memory bank built up at this point in his career when it comes to winning fifth sets. He has been highly successful in fifth sets, and I do think not only did he probably feel like he was physically stronger, I think Alcaraz, when it's time for a fifth, he just, at this point, has a lot of good memories built up, and that helps. But I think what helped the most, moving on from the mental, more than anything else, the shot making. Shot making really mattered to me in this match, from my eyes. And sometimes it doesn't matter all that much. And I know shot making is a weird term, but I guess what I'm really describing for those who may not be on the same page about what is the definition of shot making, I'm talking about making shots that are at a high degree of difficulty, usually offensively. I mean, there's defensive shot making, but normally that's a counterattack. You're turning defense to offense. So making high degree of difficulty shots to create damage or to create winners. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying shot making. And oftentimes, shot making does not decide tennis matches. There are brilliant shot makers on tour who are outside the top 50 because, one or two spectacular shots here and there, it's not enough. Doesn't get you there. It counts as 1 point. You hit a great shot, congrats, 1 point. You make an error on the next ball, that's an unforced error that will never be in a highlight reel and wasn't impressive at all in any way and wasn't a fun point to watch. Guess what? 1 point. That's why shot making doesn't always matter. But I think over the course of the match, Alcaraz was compiling enough moments and Sinner was not for it to matter. Alcaraz had more venom in his shots. He had more ideas, sharper angles on the forehand cross court, more frequent drop shots, mixing in the serve and volley a little bit more frequently. But even from the back of the court, it's just, are you going to create something? A brilliant backhand down the line? Are you going to generate an incredible injection of pace from the back of the court in a forehand rally? There are all these different scenarios, and it doesn't look the same over and over again because that's not really the point with Alcaraz. He's able to produce so many different shots from so many different locations. But the point is, he was the one creating. He had the firepower. He had the ideas without full confidence on the ground strokes, which Sinner, for most of this match, didn't have, which means maybe playing to a little bit of a safer target, maybe a little bit slower than we're used to seeing him hit, maybe making a few more errors, but without the full kind of pure ball striking that we sometimes see from Sinner, where it's not necessarily creative, but it's so powerful and so relentless. You took that away, right? And suddenly Sinner's game looking very flat offensively. It didn't seem like there were a lot of ideas there for how to create damage compared to Alcaraz, who was finding it easily. And these conditions were very interesting. They favored offense. It wasn't easy to move. My thought on why it wasn't easy to move is because the clay was very dry, because the sun was out during the daytime, and it was slippery, and perhaps the players who had gotten used to wet clay from the rainiest Roland Garros that I can remember were just not quite as used to moving on the more slippery clay, which is something that we certainly saw Djokovic struggle with against Cerundolo as well. But because both players were struggling at times with their footing, particularly Sinner, particularly when he was moving out to his forehand, because of that, a couple things were true. One, I don't think Sinner felt comfortable playing patient, and he made far more unforced errors than usual because of that. And I do think a lot of it, more than I've seen in a long time, was actually shot selection stuff from Sinner. I thought, okay, you're kind of pressing a little bit. Well, why might that be? Well, you can't play conservatively. Alcaraz is going to punish you. And by the way, that's true the other way as well. When Alcaraz was making all these unforced errors early in the match, you think the same thing. Okay, well, Carlitos, he can't really just start to roll the ball in play because Sinner's going to smother him with his ground stroke power. So that's true both ways, but for Sinner, it took away the consistency edge that I'm not going to say he needs to have it in this matchup in order to win, but he should have it in order to win. And in general, Sinner's defense, other than his return, Sinner's defense and his return were the main reason why he built that early lead. There were other things that were really good on his end, but it was defense and return, and it was making Alcaraz play a ton of extra balls in addition to maintaining super high ground stroke speed with unreal consistency. But it was never the same after the first set movement-wise for Sinner. I don't feel like the extra balls continue to come back. Certainly the return of serves were were there for portions after the first set, but I never felt like the defense was there after the first set. On the topic of shot making, there's one part of Alcaraz's game that I want to highlight in particular, and that's his backhand. He came up with so many spectacular backhands. I'm going to focus on the fourth and the fifth set, but mostly the fifth. I mean, so 4-5 in the fourth set, 30-all, Sinner serving. So Alcaraz is 2 points away from taking this fourth set, and Alcaraz hits an open stance backhand down the line from a pretty neutral position. Any kind of sensible coach would have said, you should probably go cross court on this ball, but he ripped it down the line and forced an error. It was scarily similar to the backhand that Alcaraz hit down break point at Indian Wells in the second set when he was already down a set. He would end up holding serve, winning the second set, forcing a decider. So I don't know if that's lost on most people, but you know, definitely the most important shot of Alcaraz's win over Sinner at Indian Wells was an open stance backhand down the line that he hit from a neutral position to create. And arguably, same thing in this match, because he wins this point at 30-all and he breaks to win the fourth set. Fifth set, Sinner serving at love 1. It is deuce. So Sinner hits a serve +1 forehand down the line approach. And this is a ball that Alcaraz is very far away from. Sinner's approach shot is into the open court. I think for sure Alcaraz is going to need to slice this ball because it's getting very low. Not only does he have to go a long way east to west, not only does he need to range to his left a very far distance, but this ball, this approach shot from Sinner was smartly short in the court. It was going to get very low on Alcaraz. You can't really hit an open stance backhand here because the ball just didn't have enough distance. So the contact point needed to be a little bit more out in front. He needed to step towards the ball. So he goes closed stance on the run, somehow doesn't slice, and passes Sinner on the cross court. This was a mind-blowing shot. Break serve to go up 2-love. In the next game, it's 2-love, 30-all. Alcaraz hits a great backhand down the line to open up that point, do the damage that would put him ahead and give him the 40-30 lead. At 3-1, it's deuce. Alcaraz hits a backhand down the line drive volley winner. Extremely well directed for a backhand swing volley to take it down the line with precision. That's a hard shot to be precise with. And it's also a hard shot because, like, who practices that? There are some WTA players who hit that, but that's a rare shot. And it was actually going wide. So if Alcaraz let it go, he also would have won the point. But I thought the likely outcome for a player less talented was that he would somehow mess that up, or that he would hit it cross court where Sinner was waiting. So those are a few really big point backhands, high degree of difficulty, big reward. Thought Carlitos' backhand was stunningly good. The cat and mouse points were also in Alcaraz's favor. This is another form of shot making for Alcaraz. Of course, the drop shot, of course, the lobs. And in the past, drop shots have been pretty well neutralized by Sinner with court position and ground stroke quality. If someone is hugging the baseline and hitting deep and hitting hard, there's really no opportunity to drop shot. But in this match, Alcaraz kind of forced his way to it. There weren't a lot of great drop shot opportunities for Alcaraz, but he was still willing to hit it, knowing that it probably wasn't going to be a winner, but that it might still win him the point. He was using the drop shot to set up his passing shots and his lobs, because Sinner, upon getting to the drop shot, oftentimes, with some exceptions late in the fifth set, was not really doing enough for that retrieval. You either need to redrop or you need to try to hit it forcefully deep into a corner, particularly if you're able to hit the ball at a decent contact height. You want it as high as possible. You got to try to stick the ball as much as you can. Because of Alcaraz's speed, anytime you hit the ball deep on a drop shot retrieval, he's going to be there, right? You're not going to hit it by him. So probably More delicate redrops would have served Sinner well. You stay in front of the ball, and then you put the onus on Alcaraz, hopefully from a low contact point himself, to try to come up with something. What Sinner was often doing was this kind of, floaty little chip, dig deep, and Alcaraz was lobbing him and passing him. There was also a huge turnaround in this match on Alcaraz's serve. Early on, Sinner was manhandling Carlitos' first serve. In the first set, he was treating Alcaraz's first serve like it was a second serve, which is probably the most common theme in Alcaraz losses. Like when Alcaraz loses matches, usually his opponent started to read the serve and feel the returns really, really well. Anyway, Alcaraz served terribly in the third set as well. That was not a good serving set from Carlitos. And ultimately, the overall numbers won't look good. But the reason why the Alcaraz serve is a big story here for why he won the match is because by the time the fifth set came around, the cheap points started coming. 3-1. He's love 30 down. He makes 3 first serves in a row, 2 service winners, and a +1 overhead. Doesn't get his serve broken. Goes up 4-1. 4-2, it's deuce. Closes the game with service winner, service winner. 5-3, another game that goes to deuce. Trying to serve out this match in the fifth. Alcaraz gets 4 unreturned serves on 10 points played. Mostly slice serves out wide on the deuce. And Alcaraz, even with the unreturnables aside, started to get good width on his serve consistently. That was a big deal against a Sinner who wasn't moving that well. And the wide kick on the ad continues to be a nightmare for all opponents on clay. And he didn't use it enough early on, particularly just when he was serving out wide on the ad, just not getting width, not getting height. And he got much better in that department. Now, some of these service winners I'm talking about were returnable. Many of them Sinner should have put back in the court. And Jannik, if there was one thing that I think he was super frustrated about in the fifth, it was his return of serve. Meanwhile, I thought it was going to be Sinner whose serve would help make holds easier. I thought it would be Sinner who would get himself out of holes, out of jams with some clutch serves. Jannik had a bad serving match, and that wasn't the case. And part of that was because Alcaraz's ultra deep return position on clay is going to make it hard for opponents to get free points on serve. But also, Sinner did not help his cause by making just 56% first serves in for the match. He did have a higher win percentage than Alcaraz by a lot, 74% versus 66%. But still, with Alcaraz making so many more first serves than Sinner, he actually won more first serve points, 68-56. There was a sudden dip in Sinner serving in the second set. He was up a set and a break. He double faulted in the game that Alcaraz got his first break to shift the momentum. His first serves wasn't good throughout that game either. Then in the third set, Sinner served woefully, but got away with it because Alcaraz kept dropping second serve returns short to be attacked. The only set I felt Sinner served well was the fourth, besides the first. And the serving was fine in the first by Sinner. It wasn't spectacular, but in the fourth set, there were a lot of good service games from Jannik. But at 4-5, when he went up 30 love, we've already talked about that 30 all point with the great backhand, but when he went up 30 love in this game, he missed 3 out of his 4 first serves to get broken. And then in the fifth, Sinner served 54% in. So this was just not a good serve performance by Jannik. Some positives to be taken away for Sinner. Making every return at the start, making a lot of extra balls, playing with incredible pace on rally balls without making a lot of unforced errors, building that consistency advantage. That was the blueprint for Jannik to win the match, the consistency advantage on clay that Jannik would have actually liked, obviously, to be moving better on so that he could feel more comfortable defending and staying in points against Alcaraz's firepower, where instead Carlitos' shot making and his creativity and what he brought was bringing off of both wings was was basically finding a way through Jannik quite easily and forcing Sinner to be more aggressive in his own game, mitigating that consistency edge. The other positive for Sinner is that he was taking on the high loopy ball, not letting it push him back. It was obviously Alcaraz's plan in the beginning of the match to do what he did in the third set at Indian Wells, to throw up a lot of high heavy balls. Sinner was ready for it, and he took it on the rise. He was kind of leaping off of his right foot on the backhand to try to gain leverage over the ball and make sure to get on top of the ball in terms of his center of gravity off of that. And the variety that Alcaraz was throwing at Sinner didn't create a ton of chances or errors, in my opinion. It was really when Alcaraz, I think, stopped thinking about tactics so much and started playing his brilliantly varied offensive game that he ended up being at his best, ended up overpowering a Jannik Sinner who did not get the better of the consistency battle, did not get the better of the serving battle, and was overpowered by Alcaraz's spectacular offensive repertoire. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.